Hello, welcome to Book Club with Yarnmugs. I'm Sarah, and you're very welcome to be here. This is my little space for chatting about the books I've read and listened to, and also I make a plan for a book club read, and those that want to join in, and I chat about that at the end of the vlog, or the book club. There will be spoilers, so those that haven't read that book, if you don't want to hear anything about it, please stop watching at that point. So yeah, welcome, hope you're all well. Sorry for the delay, I was meant to video this on the 6th of December, but yeah, time just got away from me. It's been a bit of a busy weekend. So first of all, I'm going to chat about the books I've read and listened to, and I've only got one physical book, the other two are Audible. So last time I spoke to you, I think I had quite a few books to discuss, but this time only a couple. So my first book that I listened to was called The Whalebone Theatre by Joanna Quinn. I've got a funny feeling this was her first book as well, and it was amazing. I've written in my little paper book, I keep a little booklet with all my books I read for the year. I've just put a beautiful and heartbreaking story of World War II, women's roles and relationships. Absolutely loved it. Yeah, the narration was amazing, and it was really interesting to listen to a story about the war, but from like a woman's point of view, and a woman who was kind of actively working in the war as well. Some bits were so sad, so heartbreakingly sad, but also beautifully written. Yeah, I would really recommend it. That is kind of my favourite, I don't know if to say genre or era, or just hearing about that time. And that might just be because it's within such close reach, isn't it? You know, that is my grandparents' era, you know. Yeah, I loved it. So The Whalebone Theatre by Joanna Quinn. My next book that I listened to was called The Burning Girls by C.J. Tudor, and again that was on Audible, and a friend had recommended this book, and yeah, another book I really enjoyed. I put brilliant story. Now I might even go to my Goodreads to look at the reviews I've put on there, because here it's very minimal, just to try and prompt me to remember. But essentially it's about a story of a female vicar and her daughter move to a village and they move after a traumatic event, and at this village there are lots of stories, folklore, history, and yeah, it was a really interesting read. Graphic violence in parts, but not on a big scale, just at moments of, and again I was listening to it, and there's kind of it touches also on safeguarding of children as well. It's a little bit like of a ghost story, but also a historical story of martyrs and most sort of like witch burning, you know, burning at the stake kind of thing. But yeah, it was a really interesting read, and again I think I would read some of her other books. She was a really good writer. So they're the two books I've listened to. I'm just going to look on Goodreads in case I've said anything more which will explain. So if I go to my books, now first of all I'm just going to go back to that Whalebone Theatre. I gave it a 5-star, and what did I write for that? Did I write anything? Oh, maybe I didn't write a review of that. Oh, I thought I had. I'll go to The Burning Girls. Did I write a review of that? I've given it a 4-star. Oh, that's unlike me. I normally do reviews. Never mind. So those two I would recommend, but with a little bit of a trigger warning for the kind of the violence and the sadness at times. Right, that was quick. 5 minutes, and they're the 2 books that I listened to. I think the thing with my Audible account, I have 1 credit per month, which equates to 1 book. And for a little while, I'd kind of accrued some credits, and also I was listening to some books that were free, like some of Charles Dickens' books and things like that, some classics. And I've got to the point now where I'm relying on my 1 credit a month to get my book, so I'm not listening to as much. Anyway, just going to have a sip of a hot drink. Before we do the book review of the book club book, which is Daphne du Maurier's Jamaica Inn, I'm just going to share some new books that have come into my home. Where is it? Oh, here they are. And to chat also about the books that I talked about last month, which were Where the Crawdads Sing and The Salt Path. I talked about them for maybe future possible book club reads, but you've nearly all read them, so I will read them in my own time. And I think I've found that quite a lot actually with a lot of the books I've chatted about. You've nearly all recommended, nearly all enjoyed them. So that's quite nice to know that I've got some good books on the horizon for me to read on my own. So after a couple of book shop visits, I picked up this book, Frank and Red. I was really drawn to this book from the cover, and the blurb on the back, because it kind of reminded me of my husband a little bit. Frank is a grumpy old curmudgeon, a recluse whose only company is the ghost of his dead wife, Marcy. He's estranged from his friends, his son, and the ever-changing world beyond his front gate. And then Red moves in next door. Red is 6, a boy struggling to adjust to the separation of his mum and dad, a new school, and the school bully. Yeah, so it's almost like a friendship will come out of these 2 characters. From the moment Red's blonde mop appears over the top of the fence that divides their 2 gardens, the unlikeliest of friendships is born. And it is a friendship that will change both of their lives forever. So has anyone read this, or could that be a potential book club? In my mind, I'm thinking, have I shared this already on previous videos? Apologies if I have, but I'm really keen to read this, but it would be lovely to read with others if you are keen. And then this is another book that I picked up recently, and when I shared this, I think I shared it on my Friday vlogs, lots of people said, yeah, they loved it. And this particular author, who I've never read before, so again, she's a potential book club. But let me know, have you all read this one already as well? But I'm really keen to read. And I suppose what I don't want is to make it a book club book and you've already read it. I'd rather all read together. Okay, so let's get on with the book club review of Daphne du Maurier's Jamaica Inn. I need a sip of coffee again, sorry. It is so cold in here, I don't know if you can hear the rain, and I have got my hot water bottle, and I am wearing a thermal vest because it's so chilly. Okay, so my book looks a bit tattered because this has come from my sister and came from a charity shop. And just to remind everyone who, if you're interested in listening and didn't read it, or you did, this book was first published in 1936, and it's the story of Mary, who after her mother's death, her mother requests that she go and live with her Aunt Patience, in Cornwall, and they live in this inn called Jamaica Inn. Patience is married to Joss Merlin, and it becomes clear very quickly that there is some smuggling that's going on and a lot of violence as well. So I started to keep a bit of a log of my thoughts. Let's go back to that. So, ready? So at the beginning I really enjoyed the atmosphere, the descriptions of Mary's journey in the carriage to the feeling of Jamaica Inn, what it felt like there. It was very, very kind of dark and brooding, and yeah, it was really atmospheric. I also felt really sad that she had to leave her village where she loved, you know, at her mother's request, you know. So that was, difficult. I then put that Joss's descriptions of the wreckers and what they do to the people in the sea was difficult reading. Yeah, he was an unusual character, wasn't he? You know, not only was he kind of larger than life, like felt like he was a very big man, but definitely had a hold over patients, and you know, definitely domestic abuse going on, whether that was physical or verbal, or just the kind of controlling, horrible kind of, I don't know, horrible demeanour, and the way he spoke to her, and her demeanour as well, how she just looked like not the person that Mary remembered her to be. There was a moment as well in the book when Joss was drunk, and he started to confess to Mary about what he'd done. And I've put here, did you feel sorry for him? Because there was a part of him, it was almost like he knew that it was wrong. And when they described all the other people who were part of that kind of the smugglers and the wreckers, you know, they all came from, you know, tough, you know, walks of life, and you know, they were all kind of struggling in some shape or form. Don't get me wrong, I don't feel sorry for him, but it was just a moment, you know, a moment of vulnerability when he kind of confessed. And it was really unusual, his kind of relationship with Mary. Sometimes I thought, does he like her? Like, does he like the challenge of her compared to patients who had become a kind of a really weak, small kind of individual, you know, who didn't challenge him. And he did make some comments, didn't he? And even kind of touched her in a way that, you know, in another life I might have you, kind of thing, which was horrible. The other thing I've put here is I really loved Mary's forthright description of relationships compared to animals, because she kind of talked about living on the farm, and that she'd seen what happens, you know, with animals when they're mating and things like that. And it also reminded me of a conversation I'd read or listened to. Have you all heard of Dr. Chatterjee? I do want to get his book actually, and he has a podcast, and I follow him on Instagram. But he was talking about divorce rates and the phrase, they never used to be like that. Like, so, you know, when you're coming to the end of a relationship and they're not the person that they were at the beginning. And in this conversation, there was a man on there saying they've always been that person, but it's funny how at the beginning, what you see, or what you choose to see, is why you kind of fall in love with that person. And Mary kind of really described her feelings for Jem, Joss's brother, knowing that he was a bit of a baddie, but she just couldn't help herself, couldn't help her feelings, and would describe his hair or his hands, or it's really funny, isn't it, that kind of the beginnings of attraction, and what draws you to someone, the smell of someone, or all sorts. So I really kind of enjoyed that bit of the book. And also when she could see from Patient's point of view, you know, there was a time in Patient's life where she would have felt like that about Joss, you know, and it would have been a lovely, you know, love affair maybe at the beginning, and then what happens in the end. Once the honeymoon period is over, you're left with warts and all, you know, of that person. And I put here how you can't explain why you're attracted to someone, even bad people. I thought that was really interesting, because essentially Mary, I just thought she was a very strong character, you know, a strong female character of the time, and she, like I say, she wasn't frightened, and she never showed it, even if she was, and she was determined to, you know, stick to her morals and know what was right and wrong and things like that. I did put, I felt really sorry for Aunt Patience and her abusive relationship with Joss. That was a really kind of sad situation, and Mary was determined to rescue her, wasn't she, and get her away. I've also put the frustration for poor Mary. Oh, yes, so now we're kind of getting towards the end of the book, because I suppose a lot of the book was about that, wasn't it? It was about Mary trying to work out what's going on, keeping an eye out, what she's seeing, what she's observing. And then there was the bit when she was deciding, right, I'm going to escape and I'm going to tell someone. And I've put the frustration for poor Mary going to the vicar and then he wasn't at home, and then going to the magistrate and he wasn't home. And then here comes the spoiler, but the realisation that the vicar was kind of in charge and was the leader of Joss and all the wreckers. I couldn't get my head around that vicar character, and I don't know if it's just because of the description of his white hair and his kind of albinism, but when he started speaking and kind of admitting to what had been going on, at one point I just thought, is he a vampire? Has he come from another time and place? Because he kept making comments about that. So he was an unusual character. So I've given this book a 3-star, mainly because I think the last 100 pages I found to be kind of exciting. I really wanted to get through it and get to the end and find out what was going to happen. But the first part of the book is where I've described all of those, what I felt about Mary and the atmosphere and things like that. And then the ending, I suppose Mary was torn, wasn't she? She was torn into, do I just go back home and start my life again? Or do I have some excitement and see what happens with Jem? So I don't know how I felt at the end, because that's what life is like, isn't it? It can't all be safe. You can't help who you fall in love with, and she knew that he was a better man than Joss was, but there was still a bit of a risk there, risk that he might still break the rules, or he might still be quite unstable and not necessarily a homely, predictable life. So I'm going to give it a 3-star. It was an easy read, an enjoyable read, but that's probably a 3 for me. What did you all think? And lots of you have kind of messaged already that you're part way through and enjoying it, or you've read it in the past and you enjoyed it, or it was even your favourite book. I loved Rebecca when I read that, and probably preferred that to this book. But it was still, an enjoyable read, and I would read more of her books as well. And that's the other lovely thing, isn't it, to think that she was a woman, writing a long time ago, and I really love that even though this was written, it was set possibly in, I don't know, was it set in that time, in the 30s, or is it set earlier than that? Even describing what they were wearing, she would describe putting on her shawl and describe being cold when she was walking across the moors and things like that. I liked all that. So let me know what you think. And thank you for joining along if you did. So let's make a plan for our next book club read. Let me just have another sip of coffee. So out of all of the books that I've recommended recently, so many have been already read by lots of you. But one of the books that popped up as in you'd be interested to read is this one, Songbirds by Christie Lefterri. And I had read that previous book, The Beekeeper of Aleppo, and loved it. Now my only worry about this book is that I imagine it's going to be sad. And for some of you, you might find that you don't want to read that kind of book over December. I'm not worried about that, but some people like, I don't know, seasonal books or Christmas cosy books. So what I was planning on, making this the next book club read, but let's have the next book club at the end of January. So you can read lots of other things up until that point, but after the new year, you might want to start reading the book club book. So let's get the calendar out and see when we're aiming for. So it would have to be on a Friday. So what I was looking at is, let's go for the end of the month, maybe the 31st of January, so the last Friday of the month. That's when we'll do the next book club, and hopefully that would have given you time to read other things over the the December period, and then start the year with this book. Just as a reminder, if you're new to book club, I'll just give you a little bit of a description what this is about. This book was written in 2021, and it's about Nisha, and it says Nisha has crossed oceans to give her child a future. By day she cares for Petra's daughter, and at night she mothers her own little girl by the light of a phone. One day Nisha vanishes. No one cares about the disappearance of a domestic worker except Petra and Nisha's lover, Yanis. As they set out to search for her, they realise how little they knew about Nisha, and what they uncover will change them both forever. This is set in Cyprus. So, yeah, that's going to be the next book club book, and see you on January the 31st. Have a nice rest of December, and see you in the new year. Thanks for now. Bye.